They tried to humiliate him with food. Not a polite feast, not a ceremonial bite. I'm talking about a pit of porridge, so huge it reads like an insult made edible. And the deal was simple: eat it all or pay the price. And the Dagda, this lumbering, laughing, terrifying good god of Irish myth, doesn't flinch. He sits down and he starts eating. Because that's the thing about the Dagda: if you only hear the jokes, you miss the power. And if you only hear the power, you miss the point. Today, I'll show you why the Dagda is one of the most important figures in Celtic mythology. The god of abundance who can't be starved. The warlord who carries a club that can kill or bring the dead back. And the master of a harp so powerful it can change the world with a single song. And by the end, 3 mysteries will click into place. Why that Porridge story is actually a flex. Why he meets the Morrígan at Samhain, and why it matters. And how the Dagda can stop the rhythm of time itself. The Dagda, the good god of Irish myth, power, plenty, and a harp that commands fate. What we mean by Celtic here. When people say Celtic mythology, they often mean a whole family of cultures: Irish, Welsh, Scottish, Breton, Gaulish, each with their own stories. But the Dagda belongs most strongly to the Irish tradition, especially the mythic cycle centered around the Tuatha De Danann, an otherworldly people who arrive in Ireland with strange gifts, powerful magic, and a destiny that collides with monsters, kings, and war. So today we're stepping into Irish myth, where the Dagda looms like a walking legend, part provider, part druid, part giant, part king, and sometimes part punchline. But don't let the humor fool you. Who is the Dagda? The name Dagda is often explained as the good god, and that can sound underwhelming, like a polite label, like a saint. But good here doesn't mean gentle. It's closer to good at everything. A god so capable, so broadly powerful, that calling him good is like calling a storm kinda windy. The Dagda is linked to druidic magic, leadership, protection, and the raw wealth of life: food, cattle, harvest, health, and the strength that keeps a people alive through winter. He's also described in a way that's very different from polished, distant deities. He's earthy, he's physical, he's messy, sometimes he's ridiculous. Sometimes he's terrifying. He's not the kind of god you place on a pedestal. He's the kind of god you survive with. And in the stories of the Tuatha De Danann, survival isn't a metaphor. It's an everyday war against hunger, against enemies, against fate, and against the slow grinding pressure of time. So if the Dagda is the engine behind the tribe's survival, what does that look like? It looks like 3 objects, 3 treasures, so famous that they basically serve as his signature. The 3 treasures: club, cauldron, harp. If you want to understand the Dagda fast, don't start with a family tree. Start with what he carries. The club, death in one end, life in the other. The Dagda's club, or staff, isn't just a weapon, it's a statement. One end kills. The other end restores life. Think about that for a second. Most gods of war can take life. Plenty of monsters can take life. But the Dagda holds both doors, the exit and the return. That isn't just strength, that's authority. That's the kind of power that makes enemies nervous, because it suggests the Dagda doesn't merely win fights. He decides who gets to stay in the story. The cauldron, plenty without end. Then there's the cauldron. The idea is simple and massive. It never runs empty, and no one leaves unsatisfied. This is not just magic food. It's social power. Hospitality in these myths is not a cute custom. It's a sacred duty. Feeding people is civilization. Feeding people is legitimacy. Feeding people is how you prove you deserve to lead. So a god with a bottomless cauldron isn't just a chef. He's the guarantee that your community endures. The harp, order you can hear. And then, my favorite, the harp. Because the harp isn't just music, it's order. It's mood, memory, sleep, grief, joy. Things that move armies without ever drawing blood. And the Dagda's harp is more than an instrument. In the stories, it's practically alive. It can be stolen, called back, and played like a spell that rewrites what people feel. So, death and life, plenty, and emotional order. That's the Dagda in 3 symbols. But now we need to answer the real question. Why is a god like this sometimes portrayed as comedic? That's where the Porridge comes in. Here's a weird myth rule that helps everything make sense. When a story gives a god a magical object, the object isn't just gear, it's a metaphor you can carry. A club that kills and revives? That's life and death authority. A cauldron that never empties? That's survival, wealth, hospitality. A harp that controls emotion? That's social order, morale, and the invisible force of culture. So if a myth sounds too magical, don't shrink it down. Translate it up. Now, back to the Porridge. The Porridge Challenge. Humiliation as power. Imagine the scene. An enemy camp, tension in the air. The kind of place where people smile with knives behind their teeth. And into this walks the Dagda. Big, blunt, unbothered. The enemies want to disgrace him, break his dignity, reduce him from a feared figure to a joke. So they prepare a grotesque challenge, an enormous serving of porridge, so much that it's not food anymore. It's a weapon made of abundance. And they essentially tell him, eat it, all of it, or suffer the consequences. And the Dagda does what the Dagda always does. He accepts the world as it is, and he outlasts it. He eats. Not delicately, not politely. He eats like a force of nature. And yes, there's comedy in how it's told. The mess, the excess, the absurdity of a god being reduced to a stomach and a spoon. But that's not the punchline. The punchline is this. They tried to defeat him with excess, and he proved he is excess. He is the god of plenty, the god who cannot be starved, the god who can swallow humiliation, swallow threats, swallow impossible burdens, because he is built for endurance. And if you're an enemy watching that, you realize something frightening. You can't break a god whose power is survival. A lot of myths use comedy the way horror uses darkness. Comedy disarms you. It lowers your guard. And then the story slips the truth in sideways. Because what's scarier than a perfect, untouchable god? A god who can be mocked and still wins. A god who can be messy and still holds life and death in his hands. So if the Dagda looks ridiculous for a moment, don't underestimate him. This story is baiting you. Samhain or Samhain when power meets prophecy. Now we move from comedy to something colder. Samhainos, that hinge of the year when the old world thins and the new world presses in. A time of endings and beginnings, a night where boundaries blur. And it's here that the Dagda meets the Morrígan. If the Dagda represents the force that keeps a people alive, food, strength, continuity, then the Morrígan is something else. She is battle fate. She is prophecy with teeth. She is the sense that war has a personality and it's watching you. Their meeting isn't just romance. It isn't just scandal. It's alignment. A joining of powers before a major conflict, like the world itself is making arrangements. Because in these stories, victory isn't only decided by who swings the hardest. Victory is decided by who understands timing, who understands inevitability, who knows when the season turns. And if Samhain is the turning point of the year, then the Dagda meeting the Morrígan there is like a king meeting destiny on the border of the world. And speaking of destiny, let's talk about the Harp. Because the Harp story is where the Dagda stops feeling like a big friendly provider and starts feeling like something far older. The harp that answers its master and the 3 strains. In one of the most famous episodes, the Dagda's harp is taken, stolen, captured, kept away from him. And that alone is telling. Because stealing a god's treasure isn't just theft. It's a symbolic attack. It's like taking someone's heart and locking it in another room. But the Dagda goes after it. He enters the enemy space again, The same kind of territory where people would love to see him diminished. And when the moment comes, he doesn't bargain. He doesn't plead. He calls. He calls the harp by name, and the harp answers. It flies back to him like it was never truly theirs to hold. And then the Dagda plays. But he doesn't play a nice tune. He plays the world. In the telling, his music carries the three great emotional currents, often described like this. One strain that brings sorrow, one that brings joy, and one that brings sleep. Think of that as a mythic control panel. Sorrow can collapse morale. Joy can swell courage, loyalty, frenzy. Sleep can end a battle without a single blade drawn. So when the Dagda needs to escape, to flip the momentum, to take control of the room, he doesn't just fight, he plays. And the enemies, warriors, guards, threats made flesh, become bodies obeying emotion like gravity. This is what the harp represents. Power that doesn't need to look like power. The ability to command the invisible. Imagine the ultimate playlist. One track makes an army mourn like they've already lost. One track makes them celebrate like the war is over. One track knocks them out cold. That's not background music. That's emotional sovereignty. And it's why the harp isn't a side item. It's one of the Dagda's sharpest weapons. Now let's go to the strangest kind of power of all, time. When the sun stands still, the Dagda and the shape of time. There's a story thread connected to the Dagda and Boann, linked to the River Boyne, where time itself seems to warp. The idea is told in different ways, but the heart of it is this. A pregnancy that should take months is somehow compressed. The sun stands still, or the passage of time is altered, so that a long span becomes, in mythic terms, a single day. Now, whether you take that literally or symbolically, the message is consistent. The Dagda isn't just a god of food and fighting. He is a god of cycles, of seasons and timing, of life arriving when it must arrive, even if the world has to bend to make room for it. Because if you're truly the power that preserves a people, if you're abundance, continuity, survival, then controlling time is the ultimate form of provision. Not just feeding bodies, feeding fate, making sure what needs to be born is born. And if that sounds impossibly large, good. The Dagda is not a small god. He's simply described in a human way, because these stories aren't trying to impress you with perfection. They're trying to make you understand what power feels like when it lives close to the land. What the Dagda really represents. So what is the Dagda? He's the provider. His cauldron says, the community endures. He's the boundary of life and death. His club says, the story doesn't end unless I allow it. He's the keeper of order. His harp says, I can move the world without touching it. And his myths, yes, even the absurd ones, show a god whose strength isn't fragile. A god who can be mocked and still remain dangerous. A god who can be earthy and still be cosmic. A god who can sit in an enemy camp, shovel down impossible porridge, and walk away not diminished, but proven. Because the Dagda is good, the way fire is good, the way the harvest is good, the way survival is good. Not polite, not pretty, necessary. If you had to choose just one of the Dagda's treasures, the club, the cauldron, or the harp, which would you take, and why? Drop your pick in the comments. And if you want more mythic deep dives like this, gods, monsters, heroes, and the stories that shaped entire worlds, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.